And hello, everyone. I'm your host, Guy, joined with my co-host, as always, Ashley. And welcome to the Unseen Journey, hosted by Operation Red Wings Foundation, where
the one and only.
Yeah, I know, right? Actually, I'm in the staff house right now for the ORW Foundation because we have a couples program coming up this weekend. So if you don't know anything about ORW and you want to find out more, do us a favor, reach down there, hit the like and subscribe. Finn would appreciate it. I would appreciate it. Ashley would appreciate it. And while you're down there, check out our link for the ORW website. You can sign up. It's free to veterans, their spouses. We have individual retreats, spouse retreats. We have couples programs, and we have family programs. So, Ashley, who do we have with us today?
So we have our second Marine on today. And very excited, Mr. Charles Wright. We love having Marines on the podcast because we love to give y'all a hard time, right, Guy?
Yes, I do. Yes.
But we'll go easy. We'll go a little bit easy.
And it's all good because we have Marine friends too, and we still love you guys. You're still the
few, the proud.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
If my feelings get too hurt, I'll just text Clay real quick and be like, hey.
I love it.
Okay. So Charles, very excited to get to know you over this recording. So you served in the Marine Corps from 99 to 2003, a pretty hairy time. Mm-hmm. You served as how do you say it in the Marine Corps? 0341?
0341.
0341. I knew there was that way. As a 81 Mike mortarman with the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, which was Dark Side. Mm-hmm. And you were point on 19 of the 21 missions for the invasion into Iraq. So we're going to have lots to talk about there. The units who pulled down the statue in the square, and currently you're finishing your bachelor's degree in psychology with a concentration in human services, which we love. We just, especially as a mental health organization, I mean, it definitely hits right to my heart. And while in school, you're working to develop a program called Veteran Studies, and you're married to a wonderful wife, and together you have 3 boys, and you have 4 boys with 1 from a previous marriage, and you're currently working on writing your first novel. I mean, you kind of have your hands full there.
Nice.
Well, you have to, you got to keep your mind moving at all times.
Oh, that purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
We talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get that. That's why I'm learning how to build video games.
And that's something ever evolving. So that's the other thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is. So I'm curious because Ashley, you mentioned, right, like mental health work and all that. And I'm noticing a trend, Charles, in people that we've had on the show, our guests. And I'm noticing a lot of veterans transitioning into psychology, really just a lot of different volunteer work, like a lot
helping, advocating,
healthcare, all those environments. So Marine, because a lot of our listeners are like Marine over here, right? Like your current degree over here. What pulled you over to this degree? Like what brought you into that fold?
When I started college, I'd really just been talking with the VA, doing talk therapy. And I thought in the journey of psychology, since I was a patient of psychology, that I would either learn how to help people like me. That was my main goal, was to learn to help people like myself during that time. But what it ended up doing for me was actually just teaching me more about myself. A lot of terminology.
How they do that?
And that was the thing that the biggest motivating factor was the fact that, I just saw all kinds of symptoms. I started noticing different things. I noticed more that I needed help by going to the program itself, or going to college for psychology. And that's really, really what kickstarted my healing, was identifying what was going on at that point in time.
Yeah. Wow.
That resonates with me so much, because I had a pretty similar experience. I kind of fell into the veteran services world because I didn't think I was going to work with veterans, helping veterans, but there was a job opening in the social services field, which is what I wanted to go in, just helping anyone. At-risk youth was what I wanted to focus on. And this job was available helping veterans and their families. And I was like, well, I guess I can do that. I'm a veteran, whatever. I don't really know what that means. And then going through it, I started realizing I'm having all the stuff I'm learning. I have a lot of those symptoms. I face a lot of those challenges as a veteran, as a veteran spouse. And so I was like, maybe I need to work on myself here a little bit. So that hit hard for sure.
We've definitely said though, right? Like you have to so from that military transition where we were all told like, hey, like take care of your soldiers, like put all these things in front of yourself, right? Like as we transition out and as we start to understand more and more, it's that airplane analogy, right? Like that the mask falls down. You got to put it on yourself first. It's that self-care first. And then, and then once we do that self-care, then we can go out and we can help others. Right. So I'm kind of curious, Charles, like you're getting this degree, you're learning a lot about yourself, which is awesome. What's kind of the goal? Are you still on a path to like take this degree and go do stuff with it? Or is it now because you're starting to learn more about yourself, it's now sending you a different direction?
Well, yes, directions have changed. I was too deep into my psychology degree to change over, but my eventual goal is to get a MSW, a master's in social work. Mainly because I was told by my advisor that I would make a horrible psychologist. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's the greatest advice anybody's ever given to me. She said, the reason why is because within the field of psychology, you have to diversify yourself and to be able to make money. And everybody wants to make money, but I didn't want to diversify myself. So that would be counteractive to the field of psychology because I would only study one thing. And then eventually when we moved past those studies, I would be like, just thumbs into the wind and have no job. So she said either go
Ain't that the truth?
So she said go into social work or law. And I've spent a large portion of my life staying out of courtrooms. So I was like, I think social work is going to be the way we go. And then within social work, I found that the advocacy is what I like about it, that I can advocate for other veterans. And then that's what kind of led me into creating the veteran studies, because through my journey, I had to piece my courses together to find out where I was going to go within it, because there's no direct line into PTSD and traumatic studies. You have to basically build it. So what I did was I decided that we would try to start veteran studies off existing programs, so that way if it's a two-way course, so that way people that want to work with veterans can learn more about the people they want to work with and what they can do to like advocate for us. And then the other side of the course is for veterans that want to learn more about themselves. And it's being set up as a minor.
Okay. Very cool.
That's so impactful. Are you doing that through does your school have like a veterans resource center or
no, actually,
anything?
I'm going through the head of the Department of Sociology. He's actually a Marine's brother and Marine's son.
See?
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, he's not even in the Marine Corps yet. He's still like, whoa, we got to listen to this guy. So, but yeah, that's where we're just building things from. Is he knows how to build it. And I just basically brought the brainchild to him.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, like within the world of psychology, having to diversify. Mm-hmm. So, the VA not long ago, created like I think it's like a peer specialist, I think is technically what it's called.
Yeah.
And what I learned was to be that position, you have to go, and each state has requirements for how you get certified. Right.
So, and they're all different.
Oh man, they are. So here was my journey in North Carolina, right? So I reached out to 5 different organizations that certified people to get this, piece of paper that I needed to go apply for this job, right? And what I found out was I was rejected from all 5 because the baseline was that I had to be a recovering alcoholic or have had in and out of rehab for drug use and abuse. And I didn't have either of those documented, right? Like on my records. Like I've talked about my use of alcohol before. Like, I probably could have fell into that bucket, right? And the creation of the requirements came from actually Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, their sociology department. And so I call up some of these organizations first and I'm like, hey, what's the deal, right? Like the job I want to apply for is at the VA. I'm going to be working with veterans. And they were like, well, if you've never been an alcoholic or you've never, abused drugs, like, how are you going to be a peer support for these people? And I was like,
and you're like, well, not everyone has addiction issues.
Well,
that's interesting.
Not only does not everyone, yeah, go ahead, go.
I was going to say, I'll give you a new one to say. When I got out of combat, I was addicted to it. Does that count?
Nice. Yeah. Well, so what I reasoned with them was I said, look, just because on paper I've never been through like rehab for these things doesn't mean that I've either A, never dealt with them, or B, I've never mentored someone who's dealt with them. I said, because all these veterans with PTSD, these symptom offshoots, like, yeah, some of them might have fallen into alcoholism. Right. Some of them might have fallen into drugs, like gambling, whatever, right? Like excessive speeding constantly. I was like, but to make the assumption that just because I don't have that one specific experience, I can't talk to a group, like, I don't understand that. And
that seems like such a check the block thing. Like they had these parameters and you didn't meet whatever the wording was, but it seems like semantics a little bit too.
Maybe it does. There may have been some grant funding language in there that prevented them from helping you too.
Well, so I think it's cool that you're now helping with someone writing curriculum, right, to build a program that is veteran specific, because I think that's really neat. Like I do think there are cross segments there, right? Like I do think, like, yes, you can work with people who have had, enter the line, right? PTSD, alcoholism, whatever. We're all at the base root. We're also humans. We still all have some functions and things that are the same, right? At the base root, we still all have somewhere in there, there's trauma more than likely. And then the other cool thing, that you're working on is a book. So what's the book about? Because I'm also curious about that.
I'm kind of telling. I'm basically giving my story. It's starting from like the senior year of 11th grade, or in between 11th and 12th grade. When I made the decision that I was finally going to go, and then it's the story through that boot camp, and then just SOI. I'm not going to go into like major detail about combat because there's books about the invasion that you can read anywhere. But what I am going to do is I'm going to tell like the little small personal stories within combat. Like
that's cool.
Finding a cache of tear gas, and that's like the worst thing that Marines could ever find, because we started trying to tear gas each other. I have a moment.
I was like, was this a fun like hazing? Who could tear gas people secretly?
It started by accident. I'll admit that whenever I did find it, there was like a donkey and a couple of dogs nearby, and I was like, let's see if these work. And I just pulled the pin and threw it. And I mean, they were nothing major, but the other Marine that was with me, when it popped, we noticed that the wind changed and it just started blowing back towards us, right? And I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, this is gonna suck. And I look over and he's already got his gas mask on and he's donned and cleared. And I was like, thanks. But it floated back over the hospital that we were at. So whenever we came back from our small patrol, I was just about to report the tear gas, and everybody, you could see it in their face. They were like, and I was like, you know what? I'll let somebody else find that. So yeah, nice. It never reported the tear gas on it. But, small stories like that are what my book's going to contain, just mainly about combat. But the thing I'm going to highlight the most is my struggles. I've got a running title right now that's kind of a little controversial, but it's probably going to stay there. It's called The Non-Marketable Veteran.
Nice.
Because I like that.
Physically, I've been turned down because of groups before, because I'm not as marketable as, say, other veterans are physically.
Yeah.
And I know that if I'm suffering from that, I'm not the only one that's hearing no because of things. And
you can't see it.
It's nothing against the veterans that have lost a limb or has that physical disability. It's nothing against them, but it's against kind of the system that's using them for marketability while kind of ignoring other veterans that need that help a little more.
Yeah.
Just because we're we're not as good in pictures to people that are donors. I mean, not that
Well,
donors aren't important, but yeah.
Right. Well, and the whole thing about invisible wounds, I mean, you can't see them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that's like controversial. I think it would be controversial if you said the unexploitable
Right.
veteran, right?
Nice.
Because
Nice.
that's what it is sometimes. They want to exploit what's going on. I love that. The
But
unmarketable veteran.
think about like celebrities, right? So like the first one that pops into my mind is Robin Williams, right? Robin Williams, known, incredible work as an actor, the comedy, person. And when I think of Robin Williams, like Robin Williams is such a great, poster face for unseen wounds, unseen elements, because
and suicide awareness.
Oh my gosh, just having a constant fight and battle against everything that was going on in his mind and his brain, and to the public, so funny, so happy, like just so out there. I mean, he was an actor, right? Like just, and then ends up, taking his own life, if I remember correctly. And your book, like, I think it's cool. So the thing that popped into my brain when you were talking about your book, a long time ago, I read a book called The Things They Carry, and you might want to check that one out. Okay. It's about Vietnam veterans. And again, not about combat, like you're saying. It's about items that Vietnam veterans carried with them. And it's a compilation of a bunch of small,
like actual things.
Yes. It's a compilation of a bunch of small stories. And it really gets to the humanity of these individuals who were serving in Vietnam. And like, okay, well, what piece of your past, what piece of your humanity was worth the weight? Because we all know as veterans, that weight adds up. Every patrol, every step, that weight in your backpack or whatever your ruck, it adds up, right? And so it was like, what are these items that they're carrying? So it's really cool what you're talking about. I think in terms of weight as well, it's just mental weight, right? It's like, well, what is the mental weight that you were carrying around as you were going through these different experiences? And I think there's a lot of value to that. I think that's awesome.
The unseen journey right there.
Yeah,
well, it's actually funny because did you say that? Because the person that motivated me to write my book finally was he's a Vietnam veteran and a Operation Red Wings alumni. Went through my retreat, my individual retreat with me. And he has 2 books written. And one thing that we found out together was as talking as veterans in different eras, but both being a combat veteran, the truth is that there's no real difference between combat. If you were in Vietnam, or if you were in Desert Storm, or if you were in World War II, or any of those areas and climes of combat, the only change is the scenery.
Yep.
So, and him talking with me, it made him realize that it's not just him. It's not just the losing population or the dwindling population of Vietnam veterans that he has to lean on. Now he can lean on even more people. So it kind of opened his eyes up to it also.
For sure. Because like Ashley was just saying, you think about those unseen elements of war, right? There's still that traumatic experience. There's still at times your loss of your friends, or at a minimum, like something a lot of people don't think about, right? I used to joke, I would say like, hey, what's the difference in deploying and going to combat and going to prison? Like you lose, you give up, right? We volunteered. So we gave up a lot of our freedoms. We weren't going to just like jump into a vehicle and go joyriding for the weekend. We weren't going to go drink, right? Because we were on duty 24/7. And you start to think about those aspects of humanity. I mean, so when I got back from my deployment, got back in like 2008 from Iraq, Sadr City was where I was at. Of the 10 individuals who had shown up with me, 8 of them got out immediately because we were already on orders to go to Afghanistan. We already knew we were deploying again. They were all single. And they were like, this is impossible. Like, I can't live my life and just keep deploying. I'm never like,
your life is on pause. Your life is literally on pause until you get back.
I have a similar story though. I got out in 2003. Literally, I got out in September after we invaded Iraq. And my last 9 months in service, were served in country. So I took terminal leave on August 12th. I had 2 weeks before that for TAPS classes. So if that doesn't tell you how fast I got back and got out.
So fast.
Right.
That's a huge,
Right.
oh
No,
my God.
no mental health, no down training, no nothing. I think the TAPS guy patted me on my back and he said, good luck, don't kill anybody. And, and that was it for me. And, the reason I got out was the, stop loss had happened, they were going to keep people in. And I had like that magic date in between the days. And we were under the guise that we were going to Japan. And I was like, I'm not going to Japan after I went to Iraq. Well, it ends up that they went to Japan, that they were only there for 3 weeks. And then they were sent to Fallujah in 2004.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, well, so then, loss of friends during that time, I was like, man, if I would have been there, and that's that time where if I just wouldn't have, turned down going to Japan, then I would have been there in 2004 with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's rough to have those feelings about it, but I'm glad they did the job they did. So
yeah, for sure.
And these are those little nuances that I love talking about on our podcast that but that's why I love the little stories that you're going to tell in your book, not to say little as downsizing them, but, because these little nuances that the general public doesn't understand, they may have this picture of what it means to serve and or what a veteran is, but it's these everyday little stories that only people who served understand that I think have such a huge impact, even the feeling of getting out while the rest of your unit deployed and both being relieved, but then also feeling like, I'm sure, guilt.
Yep.
We talk about a lot about guilt when, especially losing people and yeah.
Well, and just bringing
people
in,
don't understand.
And Ashley, like you're saying, just bringing in the humanity of it, right? It's not, what was it? American Sniper, Chris Kyle, where in the movie where it's like, hey, it's not that I miss like all these people that I was killing. It's I, miss like the people I was protecting, like I was helping keep alive. Right. And it's that humanity aspect of it, of, it like none of us signed up and said like, oh yeah, I'm going to go see if I can be like the next Audie Murphy and, slay hundreds of people. Right. Like that wasn't, that wasn't like our driving factor in going into the military. And I got it. Like we joined, a lot of us joined at a time of war, or we knew something was on the horizon. Right. Or at a minimum we were in and the flag went up and they were like, hey, you got to go to combat. And we were like, okay, we're going to combat. Right. We all joined, and I would say like a lot of people joined, so they could go move from whatever environment they were in, right? And then and then I had soldiers who joined, probably one of the hardest losses for me, and I've talked about this before. Specialist Gonzalez, Gonzo is what we called him, and he simply joined so that he could have the funds, the GI Bill, to pay for college, and he was going to be the first generation of his family here in America to go to college. And that angel flight was not easy, and the ramp shut. So an angel flight is when a soldier dies. It's kind of the ceremony of sending them home. And, that ramp shut, and we literally went from ramp shut to, okay, mic's in, headsets ready, boom, straight into downtown Baghdad at night. And that aspect, like just thinking about that aspect in terms of like humanity, it's like, you're not taking downtime to grieve. Like you're not going you're not taking a sick day. You're not going to see a psychologist in that moment. Right. Like
you got to go.
Yeah, we got to go. And just those little pieces of the human aspect, right? Those unseen pieces of all the emotions, right? All the emotions, whether it's feeling like guilt, like me, a lot of times it's like, hey, like I do feel guilty. I couldn't bring him home. And now as my kids are getting to the age, like my daughter's 12, so the conversations are starting to happen about college. Just this past, Veterans Weekend or what? I texted you. Like I was like crying uncontrollably. Like what is going on? Right. And it's just starting to make that connection that like my daughter is
Pops
talking
up on
about
us.
it is going to college, talking about going to college. And I had this soldier that I couldn't bring home, and all that kid wanted to do was go to college, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's what. So, Charles, let me ask you, because thinking your service 99 to 2003, and it's crazy how long ago that was. P.S. That was 20 years ago. So, tell us, and you're just going to school now. So, has your transition been like from when you got out in 2003? And how you found your way to even attending a Operation Red Wings Foundation retreat and going to school? What has it been like the past 20 years?
Well, it hasn't been easy. It's definitely been, there's been a lot of pitfalls. I've seen bottom a couple of times. Don't get me wrong. Now, I didn't get enrolled in the VA system until 2013. So I'll tell the story
Took
before
you 10
that.
years.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And you'll see why I love the lady I love. Right. In that story. But when I first got out, there was no talk in '03 about PTSD. There was no talk about, transitioning back into the real world. There was no talk about, hey, you might have problems. So, we were just given the 90-day, go to the VA within 90 days. If not, you don't get benefits. And so I get out. I actually joined the military just for college. I come from a poor family. There was no way that I was going to afford. We were too rich for financial aid, but too poor to really afford it. So it was that or trade school. And we couldn't even afford trade school. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just go get a GI Bill. I'll do my 4 years and I'll get out and then I'll go to college. Well, when I got out, there was no college in my future right then. I spent the next 10 years homeless. I did. I'd burned a lot of bridges. Didn't know that I was burning them. I was working 3 jobs and still living from. But now I wasn't homeless as in on the streets homeless. I was bouncing from couch to couch homeless. So
houseless.
Yes, houseless completely. And it was taxing on me, and I didn't realize it at the time. So I'd moved in 2008 to Charlotte with a girlfriend that I met when I was running a lifestyle club as a general manager, and met a stripper, and this is the peak of the bottom. And then we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina in '08. And in 2010, I tried college for the first time, and it just failed horribly. I didn't fit in. And I was like, okay.
The Billy Madison aspect?
It wasn't that. It was more, I wasn't mentally
the
ready.
In life experience.
Right. Yes. And I wasn't mentally ready to be in a large crowd like that again of non-veterans. And so I moved back in 2012 because some family members had died, and I wanted to get close to them in Texas and, express my condolences. But then I came to visit a friend that I met in '08 in Charlotte, and he was dating my wife's sister. And through him, I'd met my wife. Now, my wife is a Marine's daughter. Her dad was Vietnam era, not a Vietnam veteran. So when we first got together in 2013, she was like, you need to go to the VA. And she would not leave me alone until I went. So her dad was going, me and him just kind of rode together, Marines. Yeah. So we just ride down together. And then, so eventually we got to the point where she started noticing there was more going on. She found my sleep apnea, which I'd had for the last 10 years, didn't even know about. And it just everything has gone positive since then.
That's incredible to hear. That it almost is like the 10 years after you got out, your life was on pause because you hadn't processed anything from getting out. Like it was just.
I was drinking. I compare it to people like this. I always tell them, our Friday night bar tab. Friday night is a dead night for a bar compared to like Saturday. But our Friday night bar tab was nothing less than like $175, and it was the people that I was with, but mainly most of that was my portion. And I didn't realize that everything I had was going to waste. I was paying child support because I didn't bother fighting for it. And my ex-wife had moved to Florida. So we were kind of distanced on that. She was holding my son away from me. She wouldn't divorce me because I didn't have custody, but I was still responsible for child support because Florida does it separate than the courts. So it was a really testing time. But I mean, a lot of this stuff was things that I was digging myself into that I didn't realize. And yeah, whenever I met my wife Holly, she turned my life around. She started pulling me
A
up.
lifesaver.
Absolutely. I went to technical school, landed my dream job. I was a car builder for Detroit Speed, in engineering in Mooresville, after finishing NASCAR tech. And then I actually got a raise held back because I had taken too many absences for trying to fix my mental health. So, yeah, PTSD kind of took over in that moment, and I quit. I quit my dream job. Yeah, and because I mean everybody else got like $1 and I got like 13 cents, and I was like, you sell your parts for over $1,000, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, I
wasn't right. That door needed to be shut. It sounds like,
and it did. It got shut completely. And then somebody talked to me about Voc Rehab, and I had arthritis start setting in my hands, so I couldn't perform at the speed that I used to whenever I was building cars. So that's when I got back into school. And then while I was in school, randomly somebody had said to me that I should look up an organization called 22 Until None. And I was like, okay. So I went and looked up 22 Until None, and I met Crystal first, Carbine. And me and her husband were actually in the same unit.
oh wow.
Nice.
So there was like instant Marines again.
A small world.
And Marines again. Yeah. And then so there was that instant connection there. And then when they like met y'all, or like started sending people to the retreats, I was like, I definitely need to get in on this because I didn't talk to anybody about the retreat. But me and my wife sat down and I was like, listen, it's faith-based, but it's not religious-based because we're Jewish. So one of the hardest things for us to find is a retreat that will talk about religion, but about, hey, do your own, not, this is a Christian-based. Yeah, not a Christian-based organization, but a faith-based organization helps. So we looked into it. I went, actually, I'm coming up on 1 year. January will be, I was the first class of January. A lot of our group does. We still engage in our chat. It's not so much, we lean on each other for humor now. I know there's a couple of guys from my group and my retreat that I can call in a heartbeat and they'll answer no matter what time of day it is. There's a couple that can do the same for me. We've had some people, fall off here and there, but for the most part of it, a large group of us still talk.
Nice. That is my favorite part. When I tell people about Operation Red Wings Foundation retreats and they want to hear, like because we talk about this a lot on the podcast, that there's that sense of, nervousness before attending. It can ramp up our anxiety. What are we going to experience? What do you mean we have to hang out with other veterans? What do you mean we have to do therapy? What's the stuff we're learning? And I'm like, actually, hanging out with the other veterans is the best part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because not only do you realize you're not alone on an island by yourself, and you are hearing that, what other people experience is similar to what you experience, but you get to be there for each other.
Right.
You get to support each other. And then you also get to hear, as barracks lawyers, like we're all our own barracks lawyers, and veterans, it's that peer support aspect of learning from other veterans, the tips and the tricks that they've learned to help themselves. It's definitely my favorite part.
So I wanna jump off that idea, like learning from each other and ourselves, right? So Charles, this one's coming back to you, brother.
Okay.
So you jump in your time machine, go back in time, find like young you, right? Like now you have all this life experience. You've been through kind of these ups and downs, right? You found rock bottom, which one of my favorite quotes is rock bottom can be a great place from which to build a foundation on. And what do you go tell younger you, right? Like pre-Marine younger you, what do you go tell him?
The only thing I would change is go to the VA faster. I would tell him to get to the VA at the end of it. I wouldn't change anything I've done in my life. I'm proud. I used to not be, but now I'm absolutely proud of who I've become. I
Nice.
will say this: through 8 years of talk therapy through the VA, I had small little achievements that came along, like things that we stopped arguing about because I didn't relate them to war anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
the 4 days that I spent through ART with Operation Red Wings, and the continued growth afterwards. Like
Mhm.
my wife knows that when we were on our way to the couples retreat, I was just like, I'm going back through ART. I was like, I already know what I want to
You
talk
couldn't
about.
wait to
I
get
was
back
like,
in there.
let's go,
Yes,
and
I love that.
and
Yeah.
she was like, when I got home from my retreat, um, all of us infantry guys, everybody in the military knows what this feels like. After like a 15-mile hump, you remember that moment you drop your pack and
Yeah.
and
The
you
relief.
walk
Oh,
and you
oh,
always go up onto your tippy toes because you weigh like
Yep.
half of you and
mm-hmm.
now
Yeah.
um I remember walking away from my first ART session, and I had that complete feeling, like my steps were
Nice.
lighter, and I called my wife in tears, and I told her, I was like, honey, I feel happy. And she cried with me. Hell, I'm tearing up
Oh,
about it now. But it had been I didn't realize it, but it had been almost 20 years since I felt happy again.
That's
So
cool. That's super
big,
cool,
big,
bro.
big thing for me. So
Yeah.
that's so powerful. And Guy, you know what it makes me think of?
Yeah.
To ease people's anxiousness, if anyone's listening that's about to go to a retreat, or if you don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about going into an ART session, you need to sign up for a retreat and come through so you can experience this and feel this feeling.
oh,
I agree.
Because
I, I
100%, I
I
agree.
grabbed a Marine just the other day. We just happened to be sitting next to each other, and I think we were in a bowling alley, and with
Nice.
the kids bowling, and I think I saw an Eagle Globe and Anchor, and I was like, "Oh, you're a Marine," and he was like, "Yeah." He was a machine gunner, and I was like,
Nice.
well, let me talk to you about something. I said, I'm going to sound completely crazy. I said, but and
Yeah.
and he ended up being in '06, I think it was, is when he deployed over to
Yeah.
Iraq, and then he did another tour in Afghanistan, and he since has looked it up, and I'm getting
Nice.
messages from him now. He's like, I'm not 100% sure about this, and I was like, well, if you're 95% sure about it, you should still go.
Just go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're 50% sure, I mean, the worst thing that happens is you get a vacation and a break from
Yeah.
real life.
And go meet,
Right.
yeah, and
Amen.
go meet some people you can relate to, right? Because
Right.
it's those common experiences, those shared experiences that
Right.
allow us to, I always say this, right? Like all of a sudden you fill a room with a bunch of veterans, even if we don't know each other, give us 5 minutes and it's like we've known each other our whole lives, right?
Right.
And I do think that that camaraderie and that shared experience is so awesome. And I think it's so powerful, right? So if you haven't already, reach down there, hit the like, subscribe. Also, check out the website for ORW Foundation. You can see what the retreats look like, or you can go on our social media and check out some of our photos. I will tell everyone that when I went through my first individual male retreat, 4 years ago, I didn't have a clue what I was going to, like no idea. And met a couple of the guys who were actually flying out from Fayetteville, going out there. We had a lot of shared stories, and we had a blast out there together and stayed. Lance and I stayed in contact, still stay in contact, check in on each other, and it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like if you've gotten out of the military and you decided I'm going to move as far away from the military world as I can, cool, no worries. Like I get that, right? However, when you go to a retreat, you realize like, oh, I'm the same as like all these other people. Like we're normal people. We just had some experiences, right? Some life
Mm-hmm.
Right.
experiences. So Ashley, I'm curious, what's your unseen element? What's your one
Have one.
takeaway?
I've gotten better, Guy,
I
at
love it.
making sure I mark one down.
Just one.
Yeah. Just one. And so the one that I'm walking away with today is when we go into something because we want to help other people like us that are similar to us, that are going through what we're going through,
Yeah.
but we end up helping ourselves.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And that you don't know that going into it. It's that unseen.
Yeah.
You realize that afterwards that you're like, oh wow, I feel better.
For sure.
I feel a difference.
Yeah. And like we've said, right? It's that you go in, you learn something, because we don't know what we don't know, right? All of a sudden we learn something, and now we can apply it to ourselves, that self-care aspect. And then we still can go forward and share it with others, right? Like the work you do out there with the suicide, right? Like, and Charles will be doing here soon, right? Yeah.
We gotta save lives. There's definitely an issue with too many veterans, taking their own lives. And we hope through Operation Red Wings Foundation to be a little piece of help for that. Come through, find your purpose, feel better.
Yeah, for sure. I think my one, Charles, I really liked when you said you felt happy, right? So the thing with saying that is, I think what a lot of veterans and even just humans, right? When we as humans, when we start to block off or we start to deaden one emotion, whether it's guilt, fear, anxiety, it doesn't matter, pain from a traumatic experience, you block off all your emotions. Like we as humans, that's what we do, right? You can't block off a emotion. It's you're blocking off all your emotions. And so, like to hear you say the word happy, and even though you're happy, right, there's like tears there associated with happy. I think that's awesome because
growth.
Yeah, it is. I remember like the story I was saying with Gonzo, right? When he died, like we had all of our emotions packed, all of them, because our heads were still in combat. We were getting ready to go on another patrol. We already had a mission to go do. And then you come home and it's like you said, like you just worked. You were working 3 jobs. You were just working. Like there was no emotions there. You were literally just working. And then to start to bring open those emotions, it's all the emotions that come open together. And I think that's cool, man. I'm glad you found some happiness, brother. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to meet you, Charles.
I'm glad to. I honestly, I'm glad to just finally said screw it and went to Operation Red Wings. I will say one thing. I think I thought of another thing. I would tell my younger self to look into this organization a little earlier because, I mean, I've been through a couple of other different ones, but none of them had the impact. And I think it was Nikki was my ART therapist. And whenever she said that she said she looked me in the face and she knew that I had a hold of it. And, I asked through my whole study in psychology, through my bachelor's, I was like, have y'all heard of ART? And everybody's like, no. So I'm actually planning on doing my capstone over ART so that way, even within that, I can give a little bit more insight to what it is to even the university that has never heard of it.
And I've heard that too. And that's why I have fallen in love with our mission. I 100%, 110% back our mission because of that. Because of ART, the peer aspect, and just and the fact that, our own people who go through retreats become team leaders. So it's like, it's
I'm on the waiting list.
Who are walking the walk. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I even told my wife, I was like, since you went through that one, we can now do a couples one. So I'm going to I put ourselves on the list for that one. But I love Will and Beth. I love Will and Beth, but I'm going to have to just cut into some of their time, I think. No.
I like it.
And Guy and his wife are couples leaders.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it.
One right now.
And the thing I was going to say that I'm envious of y'all on this aspect is because me and Clay have a lot of the same background. We were at the same duty base. We actually his team leader Jason Dunham, who has won the Medal of Honor. I actually served with Jason in security forces in Kings Bay prior to him going to 29 Palms. Nice. So there was a lot of like small areas between it. And I told Clay, I was like, man, I am so jealous of y'all. And he's like, why? I was like, y'all see people heal every day. Every time you do this, you see the growth within people. And within that, y'all are healing yourselves even more. And that's that's where I think that I wanted it to be a team lead so bad is because of the the whole seeing other people heal and pushing them to that, taking from someone from rock bottom and showing them that there is a light at the top. So,
heck yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
There is.
For all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't done it already, reach down there, hit the like, subscribe, drop us some comments. We'd appreciate it. And if you're a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, or even just a relative or friend of a veteran, check out our website, right? Like, get the word out there, send us some veterans so we can continue to help them. Charles, thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you, Charles.
No problem.
On behalf
Thank you all
of
for having me.
yeah, for sure, brother. On behalf of my co-host, Ashley, and myself, thanks for joining us. This has been the Unseen Journey, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.